Ever planted a grapevine only to watch it struggle for years, producing tiny clusters of sour fruit that barely seem worth the effort? You are not alone. Most gardeners make a few critical mistakes right at planting time that hold their vines back for seasons to come. In this video, I am going to walk you through the complete process of planting grapes the right way, from preparing your soil to getting your support system in place. Plus, stick around to the end, where I will show you a simple pruning technique in that first year that sets your vine up for heavy production for decades. Let us get started. Grapes are one of the most rewarding plants you can grow in your home garden. A single well-planted vine can produce 15 to 20 pounds of fruit every year for 30 years or more. And the good news is that once you understand a few key principles and follow the right steps at planting time, you will be harvesting baskets of large, sweet grapes before you know it. So let us start by understanding what grapes actually need to thrive. Grapevines are not like your typical garden vegetables. These are long-lived perennial plants with deep root systems that can reach down 6 feet or more into the soil. What that means for you as a gardener is that the decisions you make at planting time are going to affect that vine for decades. You cannot just dig a quick hole and drop it in like you might with a tomato transplant. The site you choose, the soil you prepare, and the depth you plant at will determine whether you get a vigorous, productive vine or a struggling disappointment. Grapes need excellent drainage, full sun, and good air circulation. They are surprisingly tough once established, growing well in zones 4 through 10, depending on the variety. But they absolutely will not tolerate wet feet. If water pools around your vine after a rain, you are going to have problems. Keep that in mind as we move into site selection. Choosing the right spot for your grapevine is the single most important decision you will make. I cannot stress this enough. You need a location that gets at least 7 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every day. Grapes are sun lovers, and anything less than full sun means smaller fruit, lower sugar content, and increased disease pressure. In my experience, a south-facing slope is ideal if you have one. The slope improves drainage, and the southern exposure maximizes sun exposure and warmth. If you do not have a slope, that is fine, but make sure you are not planting in a low spot where cold air settles on frosty nights. Cold air is heavier than warm air, so it flows downhill and pools in low areas. Planting on even a gentle rise can protect your vines from late spring frosts that damage flower buds. Now let us talk about soil. Grapes are actually quite adaptable when it comes to soil type. They will grow in sandy soil, loamy soil, and even clay soil as long as the drainage is good. What they cannot handle is waterlogged roots. If you have heavy clay, you have two options. You can plant on a raised mound about 12 to 18 inches high, or you can amend the planting area heavily with organic matter and coarse sand to improve drainage. I prefer the mound method for heavy clay because it guarantees the roots will never sit in standing water. Before you plant, I recommend getting a soil test done through your local extension office. It costs around $15 to $20 and tells you exactly what your soil needs. Grapes prefer a pH between 6 and 6.5. If your soil is too acidic, you can add lime to raise the pH. If it is too alkaline, sulfur will bring it down. This is worth doing because if your pH is way off, your vine will not be able to absorb nutrients no matter how much fertilizer you add. Choosing the right grape variety for your climate and your goals makes all the difference in your success. There are 3 main types of grapes you will encounter. European grapes, which include varieties like Thompson Seedless and Flame, do best in warm, dry climates like California and are hardy in zones 7 through 10. American grapes like Concord and Niagara are much more cold hardy, thriving in zones 4 through 8, and they handle humidity and disease pressure better. Then you have hybrid varieties like Marquis and Mars that combine the best traits of both. For most home gardeners in the eastern half of the country, I recommend starting with American or hybrid varieties. They are more forgiving and disease resistant. Think about what you want to use your grapes for. Table grapes for fresh eating need to be seedless or nearly seedless with thin skins. Juice grapes like Concord have thicker skins and bold flavor. Wine grapes are a whole different category with specific requirements. For beginners, I always suggest starting with a reliable table grape like Mars, which is a blue seedless variety that is incredibly disease-resistant and produces, well, even in humid climates. It is hardy down to zone 5 and ripens in late summer. One more thing about variety selection. Buy your vines from a reputable nursery. You want certified disease-free stock that is 1 to 2 years old. Older vines do not transplant as well, and bargain vines from big box stores are often stressed or infected with viruses that will limit their productivity forever. Now let us get into the actual planting technique, because this is where most gardeners go wrong. The best time to plant grapes is in early spring, as soon as the soil can be worked, usually around the time of your last expected frost. In most areas, that means March through April. You can also plant in fall, about 6 weeks before your first expected frost. But spring planting gives the vine a full growing season to establish roots before winter. When you receive your bare root vine, the first thing you want to do is soak the roots in a bucket of water for 2 to 4 hours before planting. This rehydrates the root system after shipping and gives your vine the best possible start. While the roots are soaking, dig your planting hole. This is important. The hole should be about 12 inches deep and 12 inches wide. You want it big enough to spread the roots out without bending or cramping them. Before you put the vine in the hole, here is a technique that makes a real difference. Add a handful of bone meal to the bottom of the hole and mix it into the soil. Bone meal is a natural fertilizer made from finely ground animal bones, and it is rich in phosphorus. Phosphorus is absolutely essential for root development. It promotes strong root growth in that critical first year and enhances flowering and fruiting later on. I add about a 1/4 cup of bone meal to each planting hole, and my vines take off much faster than when I skipped this step years ago. Now place your vine in the hole and spread the roots out in all directions. You want them radiating outward, not circling or bunched up. The graft union, which is that knobby spot where the fruiting variety was grafted onto the rootstock, should be about 2 to 3 inches above the soil line. If you bury the graft union, the fruiting variety can send out its own roots, which defeats the purpose of the disease-resistant rootstock. Fill the hole with the soil you removed, pressing firmly as you go to eliminate air pockets. Water deeply right after planting, giving each vine about 2 gallons of water to settle the soil around the roots. By the way, if you are finding this helpful, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss future videos. All right, let us keep going. Grapes absolutely must have a support system, and you need to think about this before you plant, not after. A mature grapevine can produce over 50 pounds of growth and fruit, and without proper support, that weight will pull your vine to the ground, where it will be prone to disease and rot. The most common support for home gardeners is a simple 2-wire trellis. Here is how to build one. Set 2 sturdy posts about 15 to 20 feet apart. These posts should be 4x4 treated lumber or metal T-posts buried at least 2 feet deep, so they will not lean under the weight of the vine. The first wire goes at about 3 feet off the ground, and the second wire at about 5.5 to 6 feet. Use 12-gauge galvanized wire and pull it tight between the posts. Your vine will grow up to that first wire and then send fruiting canes along both wires horizontally. This system gives you maximum sun exposure on the fruit and keeps everything off the ground where air can circulate. If you are growing against a fence or wall, make sure it is sturdy enough to handle the weight and that there is at least 4 to 6 inches of space between the vine and the surface for air movement. That first year after planting is all about building a strong root system and a single sturdy trunk. This is where patience pays off. You are going to be tempted to let your vine grow wild and produce fruit right away. Resist that temptation. In the first growing season, your only goal is to grow one strong vertical shoot that will become the permanent trunk of your vine. Here is how you do it. After planting, cut your vine back to 2 or 3 buds. I know it seems drastic, but this forces all the plant's energy into those few buds. As they grow, select the strongest, most vigorous shoot and remove the others. Train this single shoot up a stake toward your first trellis wire. Keep it tied loosely to the stake every 8 to 12 inches as it grows. Watering is critical in that first year because your vine does not have an established root system yet. For the first growing season, water deeply once a week if you do not get rain. I give each vine about 2 to 3 gallons per watering. Here is a technique I use that really works well. Bury a 6-inch plastic nursery pot or an old plastic bottle with the bottom cut off right next to the vine at planting time. When you water, pour directly into that pot and the water goes straight down to the root zone instead of running off or evaporating from the surface. This also keeps the soil surface dry, which reduces disease pressure on the vine. After that first year, established grapevines are quite drought tolerant and rarely need supplemental watering except during extended dry spells. Let us talk about some common problems you might run into and how to solve them. First, if your vine is not growing vigorously in that first year and the leaves look pale or yellowish, you likely have a nutrient deficiency or a pH problem. Get a soil test and address any deficiencies. Nitrogen deficiency is common in new plantings and shows up as overall pale green or yellow leaves. A side dressing of compost or a balanced organic fertilizer usually fixes this. Second, if you see powdery white coating on the leaves, that is powdery mildew. This is the most common grape disease, and it thrives in humid conditions with poor air circulation. Improve airflow by pruning and training properly, and treat with sulfur or potassium bicarbonate sprays. Third, Japanese beetles can devastate grape leaves in early summer. Hand-picking in the morning when they are sluggish works well for small plantings. For larger areas, apply milky spore to your lawn to control the grubs. Fourth, if birds are eating your grapes before you can harvest them, cover your vines with bird netting as the fruit begins to color. This is usually about 2 to 3 weeks before full ripeness. The good news is, if you follow the steps we have covered, you should be able to avoid most of these issues. Now for that bonus tip I promised at the beginning. In your second year, there is a pruning technique that dramatically increases your grape production for years to come. It is called establishing your cordon arms, and here is exactly how to do it. When your main trunk reaches the first wire in year 2, pinch out the growing tip. This forces the vine to send out lateral shoots. Select 2 strong shoots growing in opposite directions along the wire and remove everything else. These 2 horizontal branches become your permanent cordon arms. Train them along the wire, tying them loosely every 12 inches. From these cordons, short spurs will develop that produce your fruiting canes year after year. The key is to keep only 2 to 3 buds on each spur when you do your winter pruning. This concentrates the plant's energy into fewer but larger and sweeter grape clusters. I started doing this 15 years ago, and the difference in fruit size and sweetness is remarkable. Instead of dozens of small, scraggly clusters, you get fewer but much more impressive bunches that are easier to harvest and better for eating. So that is everything you need to know about planting grapes for large fruits and heavy production. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new video. And if you have any questions or want to share your own grape growing tips, drop them in the comments below. I love hearing from you. Thanks for watching.